Once again, good day everyone. I'm your host, Lee Judge, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Visual IVR, Speech, Friend or Foe, brought to you by Jakarta. As a note, to honor the privacy of our attendees, only your name will appear in the attendee window. Our presenter today is Chris Dutoy, Executive Director of Product Marketing at Jakarta. Today we'll look at why and how the new technology of Visual IVR is establishing a solid presence in the customer service industry and where visual technology meets speech technology. We'll also discuss how to enhance and reap the benefits of your current speech solution without going over budget. Following the presentation, there will be a quick question and answer session, so please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A window at any time. Also, as a note, once again, to honor the privacy of our attendees, only your name will appear in the attendee window. So let's begin. The presentation is all yours, Chris.
And very happy to have the attendees with you. Good morning, good afternoon, and I'm really delighted that you're joining us here on Wednesday. We've made it to the middle of the week. If you have any audio problems, please text or message Lee in the Q&A window, and he will let me know and I can adjust. And also, please feel free to ask your questions. We're going to leave plenty of time to address any Q&A, so you can ask them at any time as well. So with that said, I'd really like to dive into this webinar. And, the webinar is entitled Speech, Friend or Foe. Is Visual IVR a speech, friend or foe? And before I answer that, I'd really like to take a minute to explore why the IVR is still such a strategic asset. It's easy to think that the IVR is a legacy torture device on the way out because consumers don't like it, and who needs an IVR anymore. And it's easy to understand why we think that, because we've seen the frustration that people experience with IVRs, but we've also been told, social media is going to revolutionize the customer service industry, speaking avatars on web self-service sites, next generation knowledge bases. And we see all that, but it hasn't really panned out as people have said. And, I think Mark Twain said it best when he said, "The reports of my death are greatly exaggerated." We still see the IVR as a strategic asset to the organization, and I think more and more companies are really starting to appreciate and realize that IVR is not going away, and in fact it becomes a critical part in any customer service scenario. And to sort of understand why the IVR is still a strategic asset, it helps to just take a look a little bit why and how your customers are contacting you today. Now, these numbers, they surprised me to some extent, and your numbers may vary. This is averages across industries. So certainly certain verticals are going to have different numbers, but on average, we understand that about 60% of customers today are attempting self-service. I certainly fall into that category. I'd rather not contact an organization. I'd certainly rather not talk to a person. I'm going to try self-service first. But what's very surprising about this is that despite all the self-service improvements, we find only about 30% of those attempting self-service actually successfully complete their transaction. And that's a surprisingly low number, at least it was for me, that out of that 60%, you only have about 30% completing that self-service transaction successfully. The other 70% are typically going to give up in some level of frustration because either the user experience broke down, it became too complicated, they couldn't find the answer that they need, and they're just generally frustrated. So what do you think that 70% do? Well, it's quite easy. They're going to abandon the self-service transaction, and they're going to start over in your IVR. So again, despite that self-service investment, you still got 70% of that 60% abandoning and reaching out to your voice IVR. The other 40%, of course, they're just going to call you directly. They're not even going to try self-service. They've got the bill in front of them, or they're really irate, and they're just going to pick up the phone and call you. With the net result that around 82% of your customer interactions are ending up in the contact center. So when you look at it in context of this, that 82% of those interactions ending up in the contact center, you can start to understand and appreciate why we say that the IVR is such a strategic asset. It's still handling 82% of your contact calls, so there is just no way that it's going away. And in fact, conversely to it going away, it's not just only not in a state of demise, we're actually seeing tremendous IVR innovation again. It's actually an exciting time to be in the IVR world again. And that's just not as a vendor of a visual IVR, it's for vendors across the board in the IVR space. It's just really a great time to be in that space again because of the innovation we're seeing. Now that we realize that the IVR is such a strategic asset, we're seeing a lot of innovation coming out, leaps and bounds in technology with speech. Speech recognition has improved tremendously. The dynamically adaptive and personalized menu where it reacts to you as a customer and your customer status, and standardization around voice XML, making it easier to share your IVR scripts amongst different IVR vendors. It's just a lot of innovation, and it seems that it was static for a couple of years. As it was just sort of considered this sort of routing mechanism, and now we're starting to see a lot of innovation again. So really, it's a very exciting time. Last week we had a roundtable. We had Aspect and USAN, and they were agreeing. They saw the same trends in the marketplace, that it was just becoming a lot of innovation. You'll hear a lot about omni-channel, and the IVR is fundamentally a part of that whole omni-channel equation. So really, just a lot of innovation in that space. So I hear you ask, so is speech going away? After all, the webinar is called Speech, Friend or Foe. And if you didn't ask it, I'll ask it for you. Is speech going away? And the answer is emphatically no. The speech is here to stay. Your IVR is here to stay. However, there's little doubt that the world is moving to touch and visual. As human beings like to speak, especially to each other, and sometimes in my case to the voices inside my head. But when it comes to talking to a machine, it doesn't feel natural. We don't like speaking to a machine. It's not always a natural type of interaction. And really, if you stop to think about it, touch is the new form of human-machine interaction. And I'm not an Apple fanboy, but I have to give credit to the iPhone, which really brought touch into the mainstream consumer use. We've always had touch devices like point-of-sale systems and kiosks, but it was really with the advent of the first iPhone that touch became the predominant way we started interacting with our devices. And it wasn't just pure touch, it was the concept of gestures, double tap, swipe, multi-finger swipe. All these different types of gestures meant different things. And this touch mechanism turns out that it's a very precise input mechanism because there's very little room for misinterpretation, and it feels natural. So, it's very rare for your touch device to respond saying, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that touch. Could you please repeat that? Touch is a very accurate mechanism. And it's just really the way we've come to expect to interact with our devices now. And we've tried the whole spectrum, right, as humans. We first had humans use machine code to talk to computers, and that was a complex, error-prone process. So then we've tried to make machines understand humans through speech, and we know that that's a complex and error-prone process. And touch really seems to be that middle ground where we both, humans and machines, can understand and react to touch. And it's the way we're growing up now is with touch as well. You've probably seen these viral videos of a little baby swiping the TV screen trying to change the channel, or swiping a physical magazine thinking it's an iPad, wondering why they can't zoom in on the picture on a magazine. It's just we are growing up with touch. Every day millions of people interacting with Facebook on their mobile phone. How do they do that? They do it through touch. So, touch is everywhere these days. And it's not just relegated to, kids with Facebook or mobile phones. If you look at, for example, the Tesla Model S, fantastic vehicle, that entire vehicle, from an electronics perspective, is operated by, guess what, touch. It has one big, gigantic touch screen in the middle center console, and you control every aspect of that vehicle through touch. You don't speak to it, you use touch to actually control it. So I don't think anybody can doubt that touch is really becoming the way we as humans prefer interacting with our machines, precisely because it is more accurate and it's not asking you to repeat yourself. And I doubt many people would argue against that statement that touch is sort of the primary input mechanism now. But if you look at this consumer survey running Q1 of this year, when we asked, when calling customer service, would you rather hear the menu options or see them on your smartphone or tablet? And over 50%, the majority, clearly said they would rather see the options, because certainly that translates into being able to do the touch. Distinguished analyst Art Rosenberg from the Unified View, look at his white papers on how to migrate gracefully to mobile customer service. He will see, you'll see those same kind of numbers and statistics. People are gravitating towards preferring touch as an input mechanism. So if that's true, if you take my word for it, or you believe that it sounds right, that touch is the right way of going, have I answered the question yet? Is visual IVR a friend or a foe of speech? And I don't want to answer it just yet, because let's first explain why a visual IVR means touch. When we talk about visualizing an IVR or visual IVR, what we're really saying is we want to take your existing IVR, your voice IVR that you have today, and make it visually accessible on your mobile device, on tablets, computers, and even other devices such as set-top boxes or kiosks. It is quite literally, as the name implies, visual IVR, taking that IVR and presenting it visually. Once it's visual, now your consumers can see and touch, there's that word again, touch their way through the menu system and navigate through your IVR. And as I say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is what a typical visual IVR solution would look like. And this is interacting with it on a mobile device. And as you could see, someone can easily touch their way through the different options. So instead of listening to the audio prompts, push 1 for billing, 2 for account services, etc., they are just touching their way through the device. They can use the back button that they're accustomed to when they're using devices, so they can easily go back if they're down the wrong tree and try a different option. And then when, of course, the call connects to the agent sees everything you've done along the way, so they're not asking you to repeat yourself. One of the benefits, of course, when you talk about a visual type solution is you now have the capabilities of the device, whether it's the mobile device or the computer, and so you can do some fancier things that you might not be able to do in an IVR today. For example, I can now enter alphanumeric data. Just try enter alphanumeric data on a standard voice IVR. It's practically impossible. Now you can ask somebody, please enter the service tag located at the bottom of your laptop, which is typically, some kind of complex alphanumeric key. They can easily type that in because you have a full-featured keyboard available to you when you're on a mobile or computer. So you can also leverage, for example, the GPS location of the device, or take a photo and attach it as part of your call. You can certainly start leveraging the capabilities that you can't do on a pure voice channel or on a pure voice IVR. And one of the things I want to point out here and emphasize is the picture here is showing you on a mobile device. And sure, that makes sense because we so much associate IVRs with voice and telephones. And yes, visual IVR is running on a mobile device. However, visual IVR can also run on your website. And you might think, well, wait a minute, why would I want to do that? If you think back to the first diagram I had, I said about 60% of your customers are trying self-service today. And sometimes that experience breaks down, or rather 70% of the time that experience breaks down and they try and call you. So you can invoke visual IVR at that point. Instead of just displaying the phone number on your website, you can have a contact us button or link. And when they click that, visual IVR starts up right there in the browser and can start collecting all this information from the consumer before connecting them to the agent. So visual IVR is certainly not just for mobile devices, it's also for websites, whether it's self-service websites or your consumer-facing website. So this probably is no surprise either to you. I think when we listen to a voice IVR prompt, we have to listen to all 9 options to try and figure out which is the best option for us. And if you're anything like me with a short attention span, by the 5th option, I've kind of forgotten what the first 3 were, and then I have to figure out the right key to repeat them. So scanning a smartphone screen is certainly a lot easier than listening to a list of instructions. I can scan that screen quickly, make my selection, hit back if it was the wrong selection. So, I think as consumers, coupled with the fact that we enjoy touch, coupled with the fact that we use smartphones for everything we do these days, the concept of visual just resonates and it really makes sense. So speech and visual really is complementary to each other. And that's really the good news, because it's really not an either-or situation. It can be completely complementary. If you already have a speech IVR or a voice IVR solution, you can certainly adopt visual IVR as an extension or an addition to your IVR investment. And if you don't yet have a speech-enabled IVR, you may consider visual IVR as a lower-cost approach to your consumers, and I'll certainly discuss more of that in a minute. But really just wanted to tell you that you don't have to look at these technologies as an either-or approach. Your consumers or customers are not either-or consumers. You don't have to constrain them or force them down one path. You can give them what they prefer. And so if you want to see how can it be complementary, you've got to think of visual IVR as an extension to your existing IVR. You've invested heavily in your voice IVR. Forget for a second about speech-enabled IVRs in terms of speech recognition. Your standard voice IVR, you've invested in it, and it works, and you're constantly refining it and constantly improving it and constantly trying to adapt to the changing business requirements. So visual IVR is going to come along and say, look, we don't expect you to replace or rewrite everything you did in your IVR. Instead, take that IVR that you've got and expose it to an additional channel. Expose it now to your smartphone users and expose it to your website users. This ensures accommodation of that newer visual smartphone generation, and it leverages the investment you've made in your IVR already. I want to take a small detour before we continue looking at the speech versus visual discussion, but it helps to understand a little bit how it works. Your existing IVR is probably producing something called VXML, and I mentioned earlier on the innovation we're seeing in the IVR space, one of the innovations being the standardizations around voice XML or VXML. And chances are your IVR is already producing VXML kind of as its output. So visual IVR, depicted by that green eye in the center of your screen, is really taking that VXML in real time and projecting it onto your consumer's mobile device or website or kiosk or TV device. It's a real-time interpretation of what your IVR is doing today. So that's why we say in that respect, it really is complementary, because it's taking what your IVR is doing and it's just giving you a visual interface on top of that IVR. Certainly, some vendors, in terms of their visual IVR solution, you can also use a designer to build additional interactions. And you might be asking, why would I want to do that? Well, think for a second. If you start phase 1 and you implement visual IVR just as a visual extension of your existing IVR, and everything's working great and your consumers are adopting it, you may now want to start leveraging the capabilities of the device. And the classic example, for example, in the insurance industry, when you're at an accident scene, attach a picture of the damage and of the tag of the other car, and attach it to your visual IVR session so that the agent can get that and store it as part of your file. So you can start leveraging capabilities of the device you're on to make that more powerful to your consumers and really start improving your self-service capabilities within your IVR. And then ultimately, regardless of how it's presented, the consumer uses it, and then the agent will get that kind of rich screen pop, so they're not asking you for that information again. So let's take a second here and look at the ROI, or the return of investment, of a visual IVR solution. And it's different to a voice IVR. And it's actually kind of interesting if you look at the number of components that make up an ROI, but there's one that really shows a tremendous ROI, and that's in terms of the average handle time of a call. And for most of the people on the call, who are in this industry, many of us are measured by average handle time. You know, we kind of live and die by the AHT metric. Everything revolves around average handle time for many of us. And if you look at a typical customer service call, the customer is going to spend around 2 minutes in the IVR, navigating the IVR, selecting the right options, typing their account number, possibly repeating themselves once or twice if you have an accent like I do. But by and large, you're going to spend about 2 minutes navigating the IVR. You're then going to have about 2 minutes where the agent is going to collect information from you, saying, okay, I see you phoning about, you know, problem X. Now I need some information from you. You know, maybe it's your account number and your billing address and the verification code, etc. Then I will spend about a minute with the agent explaining the problem. Gee, my satellite TV is no longer working. I've already tried to reset it. Could you please help me? And hopefully they resolve the issue in about 2 minutes, whether that's a technical issue or a billing issue, but they get that resolved. So all in all, it's about a 7-minute call, including the IVR time. So how does a visual IVR change that equation? Well, remember I said visual IVR now allows you to enter complex data that you couldn't in your IVR. If you are asking about your replacement battery for your laptop, I need the service tag that's printed on the bottom of your laptop. That's a complex alphanumeric string. If you're changing your address, I'd like to just collect your new address there. Or if you're changing your email address, change it right there in the visual IVR session. So I can ask the customer a lot more information because I'm in a rich medium now, as opposed to just 1 through 9 touch tones or speech recognition. I can now actually enter more data. So what happens is we skip that entire part of collecting all that information by the agent, and all the agent actually needs to do is verify the information. Gee, Mr. Smith, I see that you're ordering a replacement battery. I see the service tag of your laptop is 5DY7X, and I see that that is under warranty. I'll be happy to confirm a new battery shipment for you. So I've taken that whole 2-minute process of collecting information and just really shrunk it to just verifying the information that the customer has already provided. The rest of the call, of course, stays the same, explain the problem and provide the solution. But you can see there, in my rather simplistic scenario, I've saved a minute of average handle time right there by pre-collecting information from the consumer. And this can get more involved. You know, I said visual IVR can run on your website, on your self-service website. So if I am listening, monitoring what you're doing in the self-service session, and you eventually want to abandon that session and you want to talk to somebody and you invoke visual IVR right then at that point, I can at that moment start collecting information, but I can also see what you've already done in your self-service session and add that information into the visual IVR session as well. So again, we're not starting that call cold when it reaches the agent. As a consumer, you're already a little frustrated. You spent 10 minutes on the self-service site and you've given up and you're phoning. You hate starting from scratch again and explaining everything you've done and tried to do. We can collect that information really behind the scenes, and when you hit contact us, let's grab all that information and provide it to the agent so we're not spending time asking for that information again. So very, very easy to save a minimum of 30 seconds, 60 seconds, average handle time by pre-collecting information on that visual IVR channel. So, you know, that translates to big savings. For most of us here, if we live and die by average handle time, we understand that a 1-minute average handle time reduction for a small call center with just 100 agents easily adds up to savings of about $750,000 a year, just being able to cut out that minute of average handle time by offering the visual IVR session. Now, I've not even spoken about maybe your self-service or call containment improves or any of the other metrics. Just very simply being able to leverage your device capabilities and collect more data, that alone sees a tremendous ROI associated with that kind of device. So let's compare this a little bit more to a speech type solution. Now, obviously, this is a broad swath. I mean, this is not comparing it to vendor X's specific speech solution. I had to take a really rather broad approach to this, but by and large, you should see or agree with these numbers on the speech side. First, if we look at the cost of implementing a visual IVR solution, you're going to find that it is a fraction of the cost of a speech solution. It really is the fact that we are leveraging the IVR you have today, and we are not going to re-engineer and redesign your entire flow. Where if you contrast that to a typical speech solution, now I'm specifically referring to speech in terms of speech recognition, these are not inexpensive implementations, and really the range is from expensive for the directed speech, when directed speech is the, press or say 1 to do this, press or say 2 to do that, and it goes to very expensive when you start trying to do all the natural language. And that's not a fault of the technology, it's just the reality of what it is. It's very sophisticated technology to do the natural language processing, but there's a lot of connections you have to make to the back-end knowledge bases and the business rules, and it's just the nature of the game that causes the price to go up that much. So by no means am I knocking the speech vendors in that regard. It's just always going to be a very expensive implementation if you try and do a full-featured natural language processing IVR implementation. Implementation time, when you look at visual IVR, and I've emphasized, look, it's going to reuse what you've already got in your IVR. So you're looking at a 2 to 3 week implementation to kind of bring a visual IVR solution into your organization. Again, contrast that to a speech solution, which is typically measured in months to 1 year plus. There's many case studies that will show significantly lengthy speech IVR implementations. And again, there's many reasons for that. Again, not the fault of the vendor. It's just you're trying to bring in a lot of departments, organizations, and technologies into one project, into one initiative. So you can easily get into the 1 year plus kind of arrangement with a speech solution. From a return on investment perspective, typically what we see is you're looking at 1 to 3 months post-purchase of a visual IVR type solution to make that return on your investment. So you can see it doesn't take a big business case to actually get a visual IVR implemented because you're looking at a 1 to 3 month ROI. Speech, best case, is going to be 6 months. Most likely it's going to be longer, again, just because of the upfront cost that you've had to put out into that investment or infrastructure. So certainly a much longer road to a return on investment when you look at speech. And then customer adoption, I stressed at the beginning that customers love touch as an input mechanism, where with speech, we are easily frustrated with poor voice recognition. I think it doesn't matter what accent you have or where you're from, we've all struggled with voice recognition from time to time. Even though they are making leaps and bounds and it's getting better, we still struggle with that. And sometimes it's not just the voice recognition, it's the background noise that can throw it off. You're at an airport, you're trying to check on the status of a flight, and every time the intercom goes off, the IVR is picking that up. So certainly there's a level of frustration with that where, it's just not as accurate or as precise as touch can be. But conversely, give credit due, speech IVR solution, of course, is useful, for example, when you're driving, and you can, as they call it, the drive time. You're driving home from work and you want to check on the status of a bill payment. In cases of that, speech is great because you really shouldn't be touching and driving, so to speak. So certainly, there are use cases or times when speech is better. But for the most part, as consumers, we prefer that kind of touch mechanism. So, if you just step back a little bit and take a look at this, you'll see that a visual IVR solution is really a fraction of the cost from a speech type solution with a very quick ROI behind those. So the natural question then is, where to from here? The webinar was entitled Speech Friend or Foe, and it may sound like I've skirted the real question by saying neither, it's complementary, and it kind of makes me sound like a politician, not actually answering the question properly. But, the reality is they are complementary, but what you want to do next kind of depends on the situation you're in. If you're focused, if your situation is, you're on the left-hand side of the diagram where you already have a speech IVR and you've invested in it and it's doing well for you, then you can utilize visual IVR to take that VXML that you're already producing and get that visual interface on it as well. Think of it almost as the extra or the last mile of IVR integration, or just taking your IVR and adding one additional channel to it, extending your IVR investment. You've already done the investment. For really a little bit more, you can now get the benefit of having your IVR on smartphones and on the website and appealing to a new demographic. So by no means should you change your speech IVR implementation or stop your IVR implementation. Keep it and then just extend it with a visual interface as well. If you're on the fence, if you're still considering a speech investment, it would not be for us to tell you that, oh, you should or shouldn't do a speech investment. Obviously, speech investments or speech IVRs have their place, but it might be worth creating a business case around the scenarios. Consider the true cost of a speech implementation in light of the fact that we have the shifting demographic of smartphone customers or web-savvy customers who may prefer the visual IVR approach. So it's really going to be, you need to sort of decide whether you think you want to continue with that speech investment, or maybe look at a visual IVR implementation. And again, by all means, you can certainly look at doing both. I've touched upon a few of the benefits of a visual IVR solution, and I'd just like to touch upon a few of the others, because the one I spoke about is the one that you see all over on the right-hand side of your screen in terms of decreasing handle time. Yes, so we can collect some information and decrease your average handle time. So that one kind of makes sense. But proceeding from right to left, the second one from the right is decreasing the number of calls and transfers. So what we find, first talking about the internal transfers, it's quite amazing how many internal transfers organizations are experiencing. And the reason why this is because many consumers on a voice IVR are getting frustrated when they're listening to the menu options, and they don't understand what the difference was between option 1, which was billing, and option 2, which was account services. And at the end of the day, what they do is they just hit 0, known in this industry as 0 out. They're just going to hit that 0 key and say, I need to speak to an operator. Or didn't understand what I tried to say, and I just hit 0 and try and speak to an operator. So what happens is the agent gets that call, and you explain your problem again, and then they have to transfer you to the right agent group. And so it causes a lot of internal transfers with people doing that 0 out. When you contrast that with a visual IVR type solution, people can see the menu options, they can go back if that wasn't the right option, and they can more accurately make their selections, and there's no accent or voice recognition issues. So we're seeing people connect to the right agent more frequently because of the fact that there's less 0 outs, and with that, there's a fewer internal calls being transferred. And that too is actually a significant cost saving, because every time a call is transferred internally, that problem is explained again. And that eats up average handle time, sometimes not just of one agent, but of 2 agents. Likewise, we see a decreasing number of calls. So there is a measure of call containment with a visual IVR solution. For example, if you're phoning to change your address, on visual IVR, I can actually collect the new address from you and automatically update that system, something that would be very difficult to do in a visual IVR that's relying on touch tone input or in speech recognition. So we do see decreased calls coming into the call center, i.e., or conversely, an increase in the self-service conversion. Moving on to the sort of third one from the right, increasing sales and conversion. It's very difficult to upsell somebody or sell something on an IVR, on a voice IVR, because you've funneled them through multiple options which they might not have been happy with, perhaps some poor voice recognition, or blame it on the background noise, but it didn't understand you. You're getting a little frustrated. You finally get your problem solved, and the chances of responding to a prompt such as push 1 to hear more about our new fantastic offer, it's very low. It's a very low uptake of people doing that on an upsell. If you look at a visual solution, it's much more inclined to resolve your issue quickly, but not only that, you can actually display different options to a user on a device which can prompt you to select the option which is best for you. And when I say option, I mean, for example, if you're selling a roaming package or extra, cell phone text message package, I can show two options. We're glad we resolved your issue. While you're here, would you be interested in this 50 SMS package for $2 or the 100 SMS package for $4? You can present a couple of options, and the person can click through them, and it can actually link into a full, images and knowledge base and sales material, and you've got a much higher chance of doing an upsell on that visual channel, which further, gives you additional ROI or top-line revenue increase from implementing a visual IVR. And then finally, last but not least, it's increasing customer satisfaction. And I kind of talked about this one last only because it's very difficult to attach an ROI behind customer satisfaction. We all want to increase customer satisfaction. We all want to increase the customer experience. But the reality is it's very hard to put an ROI behind that. And for most of us in our organizations, when we go up to the higher level management with a proposal, we need to show some numbers and ROI. So customer satisfaction, look, we all know it's very important, but at the end of the day, ROI is what speaks. Visual IVR, absolutely increased customer satisfaction. I prefer touching devices to navigate through them, as I'm sure many on the call do as well. So there's no doubt that customer satisfaction improves with that as well. In terms of seeing how visual IVR would actually work, just as a small detour, if you're attending Speech Tech this year in New York City on August 18th, please visit us at booth 513. We'll be doing a lot of visual IVR demonstrations there. We can do custom demonstrations for you. And certainly you get a chance to win an iPad. And if you stop by and you tell them how wonderful this presentation is, your chances of winning the iPad goes up a little bit as well. And you can use this registration code if you need a discount for that. However, if you do want to see visual IVR in action, you can actually try it today from your smartphone by dialing this number or just visiting visual-ivr.com, where you can read more about it and understand how it works and some of the technical details. And you can also select a demo in a country closest to you if you need a more regionalized number. But certainly you're welcome to try a visual IVR and get a feeling for how your customers will experience visual IVR. And it might sort of make what I've said today a little bit more concrete and help you understand what that is. So with that, I'd really like to turn it over to Lee so we can get into some questions and answers for today's session.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris, for those valuable insights on visual IVR. We'll leave this screen up while we're doing the Q&A, so you can have this number available to give visual IVR a try and look at the demo for yourself. We have quite a few questions in the Q&A window, so due to high participation and high number of questions, we'll answer as many as we can from the Q&A window. And the ones that we cannot get to during this event, we will respond to individually via email. So let's get into the questions here. Let's see, the first one I see is, it says visual IVR could be integrated to any PBX or voice IVR vendor. That's your question. What would be necessary to do that?
Yeah, sure. So the idea certainly is to make sure that visual IVR integrates with your existing IVR. We don't want you to write things from scratch. Ideally, your IVR is supporting VXML today. Most modern IVRs are. If your IVR does not support VXML, we may still be able to integrate it. We have done that in the past. So it's going to depend a little bit then on the specific IVR you have. So certainly then just send us an email with your IVR make and model, and we can confirm our integration options.
Okay. Let's see, we have several more here. The next one is, someone said it wasn't very clear to them. They're guessing that you need to install some kind of mobile app on your phone to, and does that limit adoption if you have to do that?
Oh yeah, and I apologize if I wasn't clear. It does not require a mobile app on the phone. What we found is if anything, any solution requiring a native mobile app on the phone is going to severely limit adoption, as this person asked. So you know, the visual IVR solution is a pure HTML-based solution, so you can run it on your mobile or web with no installation required.
Okay, so I guess the folks who are trying it right now with the number on the screen, they're seeing that no app is required and they're testing out right now as we speak. Let's see. Next question is, how can I build a business case or ROI to this solution?
So we're of course happy to work with you in building a business case and ROI, and we can provide you with some ROI calculators. A lot of it's going to depend on your organization as to what makes a business case. I mentioned that for some of us, or many of us, we cannot make a business case on customer experience, but we certainly can on average handle time reduction or call containment. So it's going to depend a little bit on your organization and what's allowed in a business case for you. But we're happy to share ROI calculators where you can actually help you make a business case.
Okay. I have a humorous question here. Someone asks, will it work on a StarTAC? No, it doesn't work on StarTAC or rotary phones. Okay, let's see. Another question we have here. I think you kind of mentioned about, someone asked about can it be used in noisy atmosphere, so it gets an obvious benefit.
Yes, yeah, certainly that comes back to the fact that we find touch works in noisy environments where speech sometimes doesn't.
Okay. Let's see what our next one here. Let's see. There are so many questions here. Great questions. What if our IVR doesn't use VXML? I think you mentioned earlier about VXML.
Yeah, so that's kind of a repeat. If you don't use VXML, we have a designer that you can create your own flows, and you can contact us with your IVR make and model, and we'll see if we can integrate with it.
Okay, great. We have a couple of questions here also about language. So does Visual IVR support multiple languages?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, my screenshots were all in English. If your IVR is multilingual today, Visual IVR will be multilingual today as well.
Okay. Let's see. This question is, can we connect Visual IVR with Voice IVR and self-service portal?
Yeah, actually, and that's a good question because it's a very good use case of it. By connecting your Visual IVR to your self-service portal, you offer what we call continuity. So when people are on your self-service website and they decide they need to talk to you, they have that option of reaching out to you through Visual IVR with continuity of what they did on the self-service session. So they're not repeating everything again. And certainly it's great for us as consumers not to have to repeat anything again.
Okay, I'm going to try to combine a couple of these questions. They are similar. So the question is, as most customers already have some type of traditional IVR solution, once they move to Visual IVR, if modification needs to be done to the menus, would they need to change the traditional side, or would everything be changed in the new Visual IVR side, or is it one and the same?
Yes, so it's we try and minimize work and rework and duplicate work. So the idea with Visual IVR is to give you a real-time interpretation of your existing voice IVR. So if you modify your voice IVR, that will be reflected automatically in the Visual IVR. So you're not building two sets of customer service scripts. You continue to maintain your existing voice IVR scripts, and Visual IVR will pick that up.
Okay, let's narrow down some questions here so we can respect your time when you get back to your busy days. Let's see. I'm trying to combine a few here to make them similar.
I'm going to grab the one question, Lee, if I could. It was someone had said, how do you tie the voice session? How do you tie the voice session to the visual system? Because you noticed the demo automatically filled in the name. Two parts to that question. The demo that you're trying right now is assigning you a static number. What we can do and what we do in implementations is if you run a self-service session, we can give you a unique temporary phone number so that when you dial that number, it's automatically associated with your web session. That way, your agent or Visual IVR can understand what you've already done in your self-service session. So we can give you temporary unique numbers to dial. The customer can provision a batch of numbers or a pool of numbers, and we'll manage that pool and provide a unique number to match up to that user's web session.
Okay, so let's see, one last question here. What about reporting for Visual IVR?
Yep, and they also ask, will the data appear in my IVR report? So yes, There's two levels of reporting on visual IVR. One, you can picture visual IVR as an extension to your existing IVR. So those reports, your existing IVR reports, will show the visual IVR interactions as well. So it will be reflected in your existing voice IVR reports. In addition to that, we can offer you sort of what we call the graphical heat maps, where it will show you graphically your call tree and where your callers are perhaps dropping off, where they're hitting 0 to speak to an operator, where they're taking too long to get past. So you can start doing some kind of refinement with graphical analytics. So it's really two-level reporting. So your existing voice IVR reports and then the visual IVR analytics on top of that.
Okay, great. Well, to respect your time, let me get back to your busy days. We're going to conclude our webinar. I'll leave the number on the screen for a few more moments for you to catch that, and you can also visit, of course, visual-ivr.com and find the demo there for your localized number. Once again, I want to thank Chris Dutoy, our Director of Product Marketing, for such a wonderful presentation and great insights on visual IVR. If there are any questions that we we're not able to answer during the webinar, we will email you after the webinar and give you those answers directly. Also, the webinar will be recorded, has been recorded, will be available shortly on Jakarta.com, as well as the slide decks will be available to you as well. So once again, thank you for joining us. Visit us at Jakarta.com and also visualivr.com for a demo. Have a good day.